My name is Mayank. I am product manager at Modak. Today I'm joined by Mark Ramsey, founder of Ramsey International, a leading big data and analytics consulting firm. Mark has rich experience in the data and analytics field, including having served as the chief data officer at global enterprises. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for your time. Let me start by asking something that I'm sure probably you've been asked a number of times, and that's about your experience as Chief Data Officer at a global top 10 pharma company, where you led the implementation of a big data platform. Tell us about your experience in implementing it.
Sure, yeah. I had an opportunity to focus on the R&D part of a top 10 pharma company. And the objective was really to fully implement a data strategy. So that meant starting with really understanding the portfolio of use cases that were really going to deliver value for the organization. And then at the same time, it was about really getting a data inventory across the entire data landscape. And so looking at all of the data that was both internal, external, structured and unstructured data across the enterprise, and really getting an inventory and then bringing that data together and making it available for use to address the use cases. So in the one hand, it's kind of starting at the top and understanding the strategic use of the data and what questions really need to be answered. And then at the same time, it's starting with the data and across the data landscape to gather that inventory and really refine the data to make it available to answer those questions. And it kind of meets in the middle, and that's really where the value is driven. So for the top 10 pharma company, it started with building a data and analytics platform, doing an inventory of the R&D data, bringing that data together, refining and rationalizing the data. And while that work was going on, it was really working across the business and understanding the various use cases. And a use case for me is really about what questions the business is trying to answer. And then if you are able to answer those questions, what value it would drive for the organization. So you might imagine in a pharma company, it's very much around how to discover new medicines, how to accelerate the development of those medicines, how to leverage information that is in clinical trials, and how to put all of that together to bring medicines to patients much faster. And so, at a high level, that was the journey. And it really, one of the key things was to deliver all of this, maximizing the level of automation and really trying to accelerate the delivery. So the very first delivery of value happened within a year of starting the program. So I think that's one of the other key things for folks to think about is that you really have to deliver value in maybe a 3 to 6 month increment, and certainly deliver significant value in the first year of the program. This really can't be something that takes 5 years to address. It has to be something that the business starts getting value out of it quickly, and then it continues to get value over time.
And were there any kind of challenges that you encountered in leading the implementation of the data platform?
Yes. There's always a number of challenges. I think some of it is around really a lack of understanding of the data landscape. So what data existed, where was that data stored, trying to tackle the rationalization of that data. So most pharma organizations have a very large amount of clinical trial data, things that they've captured over 10, 15, 20, 30 years. But that data is in very different formats. It isn't standardized. It isn't rationalized so that it can be used. Because the real power of the clinical trial data, as an example, is really when you're able to look across thousands of clinical trials and really understand the learnings from that portfolio of clinical trials. Most organizations, most pharma organizations, they're very focused on a clinical trial for a very specific asset. And then if that clinical trial is successful, then that data is used to submit for a new medicines application. But if it isn't successful, then that asset is terminated. And in a lot of cases, that's the last use of that clinical trial data. But there's thousands, if not millions, of data attributes in those clinical trials that can be used all the way back to the discovery of new medicines. So one of the big challenges is finding the data, getting a good inventory, profiling that data, and really bringing it together. So that was one of the major challenges that we had in the program.
Mark, a lot of enterprises talk about implementing modern data platforms. Having led that exercise as a CDO, what do you think are the defining characteristics of a modern data platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think unfortunately, I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing this type of work for over 30 years. And unfortunately, I see a lot of organizations who are attempting to solve the data challenges with exactly the same approach that hasn't worked for the last 20, 25 years. So, and what I mean by that is that many organizations are still using traditional tools to do an inventory of their data and to move that data and then to try to rationalize that data. And the traditional tools take a tremendous amount of manual effort, and the time frames on tackling those challenges are extended. And so in my mind, a modern data management ecosystem is really, fundamentally, it's using data and analytics to tackle some of the problems that we have to face in the data landscape. So it's using AI and machine learning to tackle the inventorying of the data, the rationalization of the data, the profiling of the data. So actually, we normally hear people talking about using advanced analytics to tackle a business problem, but unfortunately, many organizations don't use advanced analytics to actually tackle the data management problem. And so for me, a modern data management environment is one that is highly automated and uses a significant amount of automation and data analytics to really tackle the problems. And so that was one of the learnings from the project at the large pharma company, is to really focus data analytics, focus automation, automate absolutely as much as possible.
Modac's Nabu, Mark, integrates a lot of these capabilities that you just talked about for a modern data platform in terms of converging data integration, data preparation, inventorying of data, profiling of data into a single integrated platform. What do you think is the role of such integrated platforms in accelerating the journey of analytics in an enterprise?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's key. I mean, it is the fundamental focus area for truly delivering in today's very diverse environment with data. And so the Nabu product is very focused on doing automated data inventory, automated data profiling, automated data ingestion, and the cataloging and the searching capabilities, like you mentioned. It is key to being successful, and it's a very unique solution. And actually, I'm having an opportunity to use that solution with another top 10 pharma company right now, and we've been able to inventory, profile, and ingest tens of thousands of tables of data into a data lake in a very accelerated time frame. So that gets back to my focus that we really need to be able to deliver in a 3 to 6 month time frame. And this is something where using technology like Nabu really helps accelerate the journey. Otherwise, a project like this would take years. And so the work that we've been able to do on this current project, if we would have tried to do that work without Nabu, it would have taken probably 18 months to 2 years to reach the same point that we've been able to reach in a matter of weeks. So it is a step change transformational way. So it's a very unique product in that regard, because it does actually focus the analytics on the data landscape and really be able to accelerate that journey.
Besides software solutions, Mark, services also play an important role in implementing of analytics use cases. What are your expectations from a service provider or a service integrator, systems integrator, in terms of the capabilities they bring in, the experience, the innovation, and the kind of skill sets they possess?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, the solutions are very important. Most of the large scale data and analytics solutions, they're really comprised of maybe a dozen or so solutions. So a dozen or so products or software that then have to work together in an ecosystem. So I think there's a couple of expectations. One is it's extremely important that the providers of the solutions work well together and interoperate, because that helps accelerate the delivery of the solution. But equally important is the services capabilities that are involved in the delivery of these types of solutions. And I think a key component is really around experience and the level of capabilities that that the services organizations bring to the project. You know, unfortunately, I've seen a number of cases where because data and analytics solutions are increasing and there's a lot of demand for skills in the data and analytics space, I've seen a lot of what I would characterize as general skills be rebranded as data and analytics skills, and it really doesn't work. You really do need folks that have expertise in delivering data and analytics solutions, working with these specific solutions and putting all the pieces together. One of the key reasons that we see failures, probably the number one reason that we see failures in the data analytics area, is not having key business expectations and really having a good understanding of those questions that need to be answered. But the number two is really trying to use general skills to address a very specific problem. And so, I think in the services area, it's extremely important when folks are considering what organizations to engage, that the deciding factor is not around cost. The deciding factor really has to be around the skills and the expertise that the company offers. And it has to be very much in alignment with the challenges of the particular program.
Mark, one hears a lot about discussions around using cloud in data and analytics processes. Cloud is increasingly central to the planning processes of data and analytics leaders. What do you think are the kind of questions that organizations should be asking themselves before they decide to migrate existing platforms to cloud or implement new platforms on cloud?
No, I think cloud is certainly fundamental to the implementation of data solutions today. I think the misconception about cloud is, again, a cost factor, right? If people think that moving to cloud is simply to reduce the cost of running a program, that is not the case. However, flexibility is something that, because of the flexibility in the cloud environment, if you really design the solution in a way that it grows and contracts with the demands placed on it, then you really can take advantage of key capabilities within the cloud. I've seen some organizations that they have an existing solution, it's hosted in their data center, and they believe that if they just kind of do a lift and shift over to a cloud, that it's going to be less expensive. And that is not the case. Now, that being said, if you design a solution and you deploy it in the cloud, you have flexibility that isn't available in an on-premise data center. You have that flexibility to add significant number of instances when the demand goes up. You have an ability to implement different types of instances based on the workloads and the capabilities that are really required. So flexibility is key for the cloud. The thing that I like to help people understand is to design their solution to be portable, so that it can run not only in the cloud, but run across multiple clouds. So the real design point is around hybrid multi-cloud. So the solution should be designed so that if there are components of the solution that need to run on-premise for some reason, that solution is able to do that, but at the same time that the solution can run in a cloud, but not just one cloud, right? It needs to be able to run across multiple clouds. So I usually caution organizations not to go down really deep into cloud native capabilities, because that limits their ability to move between cloud offerings. And even if you implement the solution with a single cloud provider, do it in a way that allows you the flexibility to move some of the workload or all of the workload to another cloud provider if the need demands, right? So it's kind of like electricity in our house. We wouldn't want to design a refrigerator that only worked with a specific electric provider, right? We don't want to have to change our refrigerator if we change providers of electricity. Electricity, just like cloud, needs to be something that we can move and change without completely rebuilding the solution. And I have to be very clear that there's tremendous value in leveraging cloud. You can accelerate the delivery of solutions. You can have a lot of flexibility on scope and size and scale and those types of things. But the fundamental is just really focus on supporting hybrid multi-cloud so that you're not painting yourself in a corner.
So coming to the current scenario with the global COVID-19 pandemic going on, tell us what you are probably talking to some data and analytics leaders. What is the perspective that you have in terms of how this pandemic will impact data science initiatives within the enterprises? And how do you think analytics teams can respond to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the pandemic, it's definitely fundamentally changing pretty much every organization. Unfortunately, some organizations have seen a significant downturn in their overall business, and so it has impacted people, even data scientists within some organizations. So if you look at the travel industry, so hotels and airlines, they have seen a significant drop in their business, and unfortunately, a lot of folks have fundamentally lost their job, even as data scientists or in the data space. On the other hand, there are a lot of businesses that, because of the move to digital and a lot of the analytic drives that are actually increasing, there has been a surge in demand for analytics and data science skills in other industries. So I think in general, what we're seeing is that the pandemic has really accelerated the digital adoption. So most folks like us today, we're working remotely. We're not working in an office, which means that our method of communicating has changed, but also just the method of making decisions has changed. And a lot of that is significantly increasing the demand for data and data science activities. So if you kind of look at the industries that have not been traumatically impacted by the pandemic, like I said, travel is a great example, that just something where they have an 80% drop in their business. Outside of that, I think there's really has been a significant increase in government organizations and manufacturing to really take advantage of data as a strategic asset. So, I think after we see a little bit of a tail on the situation around the pandemic, there's still going to be a fundamental change in the way the businesses operate. And I think it's accelerated digital, and it's also accelerated using data and analytics as a key way to drive decision making.
Like you said, data is increasingly seen as a strategic asset. In fact, some people call this the data decade. Looking ahead a few years from now, what excites you most about developments in the data and analytics field?
Yeah, and like I said earlier, I mean, I've been doing this for over 30 years. So I've been excited about data for 3 decades already. The thing that excites me is that there's even a new passion around data and the use of data. Some of the emerging technologies like the deep learning and machine learning, new algorithms and ways to incorporate data. I think the thing that excites me the most is that data and analytics is now squarely a discussion point at the board level of most organizations. When I started this journey 30 years ago, data was an interesting discussion, but it was a discussion that was really happening at a manager level or a director level in the organization, how to help make some decisions. But today, for a variety of reasons, most board discussions include, how to make sure that an organization is leveraging not only the data that they have within the organization, but also understanding how they can leverage external data to really have an impact on the operation of their organization. So, like I said, I think that's the thing that's most exciting to me, is that this discussion is now at the top of almost every organization, and the demand for how to use data as a strategic asset, it is really something that, I guess to your point, some people are referring to this as the data decade. I think it's really because people are really understanding that they have to figure out how to use data as a strategic asset. It's not a good to have, it's a must have.
And given that data is a must have, the role of CDO is also evolving. In your experience, how have you seen the role of CDO evolve over the past few years? And how do you see it evolving over the next few years?
The role is certainly evolving, right? So when early CDOs were appointed, it tended to be what MIT refers to as a defensive position, right? So it was really around roles in a bank or other organizations that focused on data privacy, data security, data quality, fundamental data governance. It was really focused on the internal aspects of the organization. I think if we look at what's happening today, most CDOs today are really focused on how to use data to benefit the organization, increase revenue, build new businesses within the organization around the data. So it's really putting it on the offense as opposed to the defense. And so I think that transformation started a year or so ago, where CDOs that were being appointed were really looking for ways to use data as a differentiator, less so on some of the fundamentals. I think if we look forward, not only will we see significantly more CDOs in organizations, I mean, Gartner is forecasting that within the next few years, nearly 80% of the global organizations will have a formal CDO within the organization. And I think we're on that trajectory. We're seeing a lot more CDOs appointed within state governments, within the federal government, within most organizations. And so I think it's going to be pretty pervasive across organizations. And I think the role will continue to evolve, where it actually will be a role that is a senior level role. I think that's the other thing that has changed, is that even though it had the chief data officer title, I think in many organizations, it was really middle management, or kind of a role that had the title, but didn't really kind of, a lot of times people use the phrase sit at the table, right? It wasn't really a role that was on par with the chief information officer, the chief marketing officer. I see a significant change in that today, where we are seeing more CDOs that are peers and actually reporting to the chief executive officer, and their peers to other chief roles within the organization, and really representing data as a key component of the organizations. And I think that's going to continue to change over the next several years, and data continues to have more of an impact in the future of organizations.
And given the fact that the role of CDO, like you said, is continuing to evolve, if somebody who's just stepping into the role of a CDO currently were to come to you for advice, what would be your suggestion to them?
Yeah, and I do have an opportunity to mentor a number of folks that are either early CDOs or folks that have a passion around data and analytics, that are interested in becoming a CDO. And my advice to them is typically to really make sure that they have a good business and technology experience. So as they build up their skills, don't focus exclusively on technical skills, but also focus on business skills, because a true CDO is one that kind of balances between having discussions with the senior executives of an organization around the business impact of the data, and then also having discussions with data scientists and data architects around understanding and helping to design how the data gets implemented within the organization, at a more technical level. I do see some folks that they've started in a data profession, like they're a data architect, or they've started as data modeler and then moved into data architect, and they have the aspiration of becoming a CDO, but they really have spent most of their career more in a technical realm. And so that's where the advice is: just make sure that in addition to the technical experience, that they also have an opportunity to really understand the key drivers from a business perspective as well. So how data is going to make a difference to the organization, how those questions are going to be answered. That's critically important in that journey to become a CDO.
And those are great points, Mark. I think for anybody who's working in the data and analytics field, this provides a lot of food for thought. I'm glad we covered some very important points from your experience implementing a big data platform to now the role of services and the increasing conversations around cloud computing, to what we are looking forward to in the next few years in this field. Thank you so much, Mark, for taking out time for this conversation. And thank you so much for sharing your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Manak.